Welcome back. It's 8:43 and you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Olivia and Martin.
Well, join us now to go through some of the other stories making headlines today are the assistant editor at The Spectator, Cindy Yu, alongside HuffPost UK political editor Kevin Schofield. But first, let's have a look at what's making the front pages this morning.
The Guardian leaves with Tory anger over David Cameron's plans to unlock billions of pounds in foreign aid.
Thought they got rid of foreign aid. The Daily Mail leads with a prostate cancer breakthrough, reporting that thousands of lives could be saved due to a landmark new screening process.
The Times focuses on comments made by the Health Ombudsman, who say that a toxic NHS puts people at risk.
And The Telegraph has an interview with the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, in which he says the time at last has come for tax cuts. OK, let's cut back now to Kev and Cindy. Cindy, shall we kick off? We haven't had a go at Keir Starmer yet today. Shall we go into that?
Yes, we can. Let's do that. But it's also quite a sympathetic story here in The Times. Starmer's fears for family over backlash. And this is obviously over the fact that Keir Starmer and the party have basically been in opposition to a ceasefire, despite, you know, this civil war within the party going on. And Keir Starmer's actually said that he's had a lot of death threats and he's worried for the safety of his family. And he's not the only Labour MP who has faced so much death threats as well.
Right in saying that his wife and children are Jewish as well, Keir Starmer?
Yes, that's right, that's right. And so he's gone on to the Newsagents podcast to say that, you know, this is a deeply concerning time. And people like Rashanara Ali, Wes Streeting, Jonathan Ashworth, Liz Kendall, all have faced really kind of violent stuff in their inboxes. And some of this have been kind of posters over their constituency offices and that kind of stuff. So it really goes to show, I think, you know, in the aftermath of the death of David Amos, how violent politics can get, and politicians doing their job, facing a lot of unfair, I would say, pressure, and also B, just how deeply felt and how emotive this issue is and continues to be for Labour.
I wonder, Kev, we are seeing, I think, an utter grotesquerie since this war has broken out in terms of political bullying, haranguing. We saw a mob outside the Bethnal Green Labour Party candidate's office on Thursday night, beg your pardon. And all of the haranguing and the bullying seems to be coming from one side. It really, truly does. And this importation of the toxicity from the Middle East onto British streets, into British politics, it's unearthed, I think, something deeply unpleasant.
Well, I mean, as Cindy was saying, you know, it's not that long, couple of years since David Amos was sadly killed at a constituency surgery. Joe Cox, obviously, in 2016. Stephen Timms, the Labour MP, was stabbed at a surgery as well. And, you know, after each of these incidents, we always say, you know, we've got to take more security to do with MPs, and yet here we are again. And I noticed as well there was a list, I think it was the Green Party tweeted a list of all those who hadn't voted for a ceasefire, put it on social media, and people are saying, well, hang on a minute, you're pretty much making these people targets now. And we're seeing, you know, as we say, it's not as if we haven't seen political violence in this country, and it's very dangerous. And I'm all for people protesting, absolutely no problem with that, free speech and democracy. However, I think there's a difference between protesting and intimidating, and if you start to intimidate not just the MPs but their staff, their constituency staff, who, you know, they didn't vote, they didn't take any part in it, they're just doing their jobs, and they're coming under threat as well. I think that's when it steps over the line, personally.
Yeah. I was really shocked to see the abuse on social media of Wes Streeting, with people piling in saying that he should be criticised, people should be reminded that he's gay, and essentially inciting homophobia.
Yeah, I mean, that's remarkable, really. We thought we'd long since moved on from that particular debate.
I wonder if it is remarkable. I really wonder if it is remarkable, because another thing I think we just need to talk about is the attitudes of the British Muslim population. We've seen being flattering, very, very socially conservative compared to the liberal values that we espouse ourselves. And we have seen studies before of intolerance towards the gay community from some of the more hardline Muslim community. And I wonder if actually this Palestine issue has kind of peeled back the layers on this, and we're seeing actually the ugly truth of cultural division in Britain.
Well, I wouldn't say that all Muslims are like this at all.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying typically across the population. Channel 4 did a big study,
but I think there are,
did a study.
Yeah, and I think there are cultural what's the best way of putting this? Cultural assumptions and cultural norms, let's put it that way. Cultural norms where, some religions, some cultures are much less tolerant towards the LGBT community. That's just a fact, right? That's just a fact that the West, the liberal West, is probably the most tolerant of it in the world. And so similarly for political rights, for freedom of speech, I think there are political cultures and societal cultures where freedom of speech and this kind of intimidation is much less, much more normal. And so, but we don't want that. Right, and I think, I'm an immigrant to this country. I wasn't born in this country. I think it's great that we have a multicultural city, multicultural country, but people have to subscribe to the political values. I'm not saying we should have a loyalty test or anything like that, but, basic fundamental values like freedom of speech.
But is multiculturalism working when we can see a 650% increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes since October the 7th? It's not working.
Well, it depends on who that's coming from. I don't know if we know exactly where that's coming from. And by the way, when we talk about political violence, Jo Cox wasn't killed by someone from that exactly, part of the spectrum. Jo Cox was killed by a far-right violent man who thought that she was too pro-Remain. So I think let's be, let's see. I'm not saying all sides are the same, but clearly violence and extremists exist on all sides.
I certainly wouldn't leap to the assumption that it means that multiculturalism has failed. I don't think it has, but I think it does show certainly that there are people out there who may wish to use this particular debate to advance further issue and do it in such a way that is not in keeping with the political debate in this country.
It does feel as though there's just a very febrile atmosphere generally in Britain at the moment. Do you think that's going to sort of die down anytime soon, or are these marches going to continue week after week? The tensions in the Middle East just keep ramping up, and where does this lead?
Well, it'll be interesting to see, whether the numbers in the marches continue to increase or whether they start to come down, because sadly, I think this war is going to go on for quite some time. There doesn't seem to be any realistic prospect of a ceasefire, so it will be interesting to see exactly what momentum there is behind these marches going forward for the next few months.
Moving on to one of your stories, Kev. James cleverly scoffed at the Rwanda plan
I love this story.
and then became Home Secretary.
Well, now, this is a great story because this all kind of began earlier in the week. So on the day that he became Home Secretary, he was up in the Commons talking about Rwanda, and Yvette Cooper revealed that he had once, and I won't say the word, he had once been, he'd rather used a swear word, shall we say, to describe the Rwanda policy. Now, he didn't deny it in the chamber. He was asked about it on a broadcast round several times by various interviewers, and he said he couldn't remember saying it, which is red flag. That means he did say it. But this has taken it on a bit. The Daily Mail have said that a couple of months ago, while he was still Foreign Secretary, he was in a ministerial meeting where he apparently described the Rwanda plan as a waste of money and that it won't work, which again is in keeping with this other word that he used before. So clearly there is, let's just put it mildly, scepticism from James Cleverly about Rwanda. And the giveaway as well is that the Home Office did not respond to the request for comment about his alleged remarks, which again is a bit of a...
What I love about
he did actually say it.
Is how shifty he looked on TV. I mean, he was asked about it and he was literally scratching his nose, sort of hiding behind that. No, I don't know, I can't remember.
All of the indicators of telling a porky were there. But it is incredible that the guy who's just been put into the job is basically, taking the mickey out of the flagship.
But Martin, when you talk to politicians in private, I mean, the amount of things that they say that deviate from the government line, we all know on this panel, it just goes to show that often what they say on air when they have to stick to the government line isn't actually what they personally believe in, and that's not just Rwanda.
And perhaps there'll be people thinking, well, James Cleverly probably had a point on Rwanda, given that it's now gone down in the Supreme Court. Maybe he's exactly who we need as Home Secretary.
And we also know as well that he is very sceptical about leaving the ECHR as well, which again puts him at odds with quite a lot of Conservative MPs.
Does indeed. Now then, we're often told to stop polluting and fingers are wagged at Britain, net zero and all the rest of it. Turns out, where actually holds the top spot for the most polluted cities this week in the world?
Yeah, so this is New Delhi, which is a really concerning story, actually. So we are used to stories about how Beijing, for example, has really bad air pollution. But New Delhi, Beijing has really tackled that air pollution in the last decade or so. New Delhi has got 4 times the kind of air pollution that Beijing has at the moment, which means that literally schools have been closed this week. People have been asked to stay at home to work instead. Obviously, only a certain section of society.
So you can see on the screen there, for those who are listening at home, just basically a huge pea soup of a cloud. The lights are on the streets in the daytime, by the looks of it, in New Delhi. Thick smog choking the city. And as you said, Cindy, people are being advised to stay indoors. It's that bad.
Yeah, and I think it really raises questions about India as a country. You know, India in this year has been in the news in the UK because of the Indian trade deal. Rishi Sunak's going over there, hosting the G20. You know, all of these things that show India, and also more people now than China, actually, in terms of population size. So all of these things suggest that India is a really up-and-coming country. But there are just these issues that it really needs to tackle in order to really secure that status as a wealthier country that people want to live in. So it's, I think, very concerning for Indians that they have to go through this stuff. And interesting technological advances as well, that they're talking about artificial rain. You know, if you drive planes through and distribute these pellets, they can trigger rain, which kind of washes away the air pollution. But all these different things. But I think it's a fascinating country, and very interesting to see how it's taken over Beijing as the most air-polluted city in the world.
OK, Cindy and Kev, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm a bit disappointed we didn't get to your story there, Kev, about a cat gets its own flat.
I was looking forward to talking about that.
Because my daughter builds a little house for my cat every time I get a big cat food delivery. Harry. It's called Harry's Place, and it's got mats in it. She actually puts more care into that than she does into me.
My cat would fit in a food box. She's absolutely.
No, it's a big delivery box, and it's quite a swish. Anyway, as we approach the top of the hour. The things you learn on breakfast. As we approach the top of the hour, we have much, much more to come this morning. But first, let's take a quick look at your all-important weather. Has it brightened up yet?